Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Billy Wilder Theater. I'm Claudia Besser, I'm the Director of Public Programs here at the Hammer Museum, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you to tonight's conversation with Roxane Gay and Amber Phillips. Before we dive into, woo! It is really exciting. Before we dive into tonight's program, I want to mention two other upcoming programs that you might be interested in. On June 24th, we're screening a new documentary about the fight for trans rights. The film follows ACLU lawyer Chase Strangio as the first out trans person to argue a case before the U.S. Supreme Court as he fights against anti-trans legislation. The film is called Heightened Scrutiny, and the case he's arguing is before the Supreme Court right now. Actually, the result is expected around June 24th when we have this screening. The outcome will determine the future of legal bodily autonomy for trans people, as well as for contraception, abortion, and reproductive health care. And then on July 15th, when the latest Supreme Court decisions have all been released, we will host a panel of constitutional law scholars to discuss the new decisions and their impact on our lives. So now I'm very happy to have the honor of introducing our two guest speakers tonight. Amber J. Phillips is a storyteller, filmmaker, and creative director. She's devoted to using radical Black queer imagination to create stories, art, culture, and community. Amber released her first short film, Abundance, about the limitations and radical possibilities of identity in 2021, and she currently writes about Black queer life, culture, and gender for Refinery 29, Essence, and as a staple on her amazing Instagram. Roxane Gay is a renowned writer, editor, professor, and feminist badass. She's the author of several best-selling books, including Bad Feminist, Hunger, Difficult Women, and Opinions, a decade of arguments, criticism, and minding other people's business. She's also the author of the award-winning World of Wakanda for Marvel, and the editor of Best American Short Stories in 2018. Her own short stories and essays can be found in Harper's Bazaar, A Public Space, McSweeney's, Tin House, Oxford American, American Short Fiction, Virginia Quarterly Review, and many others. She's also a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times, and she's the founder and editor of Roxane Gay Books, an imprint at the publisher Grove Atlantic. She's also the Gloria Steinem Endowed Chair in Media, Culture, and Feminist Studies at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, and she's working on several new books and film and television projects. And her newsletter, The Audacity, is hosted at Substack. In her new innovative anthology, The Portable Feminist Reader, she explores what feminism looks like in practice. The writings she selected illustrate her interpretation of the feminist canon as expansive rather than definitive, and invites robust discussion and debate. Her selections for the book include classic and modern authors, including writings by Susan B. Anthony, Kimberlé Crenshaw, the Guerilla Girls, and many more. After tonight's discussion and Q&A, we're going to have a chance to continue this discussion over some light refreshments in the lobby, and Roxane will be available to sign copies of her new book. So now, please join me in welcoming Amber J. Phillips and Roxane Gay.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to do that again. Hello, everyone. It's Pride, honey. Y'all going to have to kick it up a little bit, all right? We're here with the Roxane Gay. Do you have any opening thoughts before I jump in and give some intros?
I mean, where do we begin? Don't read the news. It's not
Skip
good.
it.
It's not good. But thank you all for coming out tonight. It's amazing to see so many smiling faces here.
Yes. Okay.
I live here. But thank you.
Yes. And me too, okay? South
Yes.
LA, what's up? Any Lamert Park residents? What's going on? Yes, okay. So my name is Amber J. Phillips, also known as Amber Abundance, and I'm so excited to be here today. I'm really going to, I told Roxane backstage that I'm going to treat this like, these are the questions I would ask her if I just had all of her time, undivided attention. because one of the things that I really love and have admired about Roxane's work over the years, she has given me a lot of courage to not only be a very smart Black girl and to really tell people what I think, but you give me the courage to be human as well, to participate in my likes and desires while also, reading people down in a fascist state, okay?
I mean, it has to be done.
It has to be done. And you have given us so much work to help folks like us do that. And this reader is no different. I think as someone who really came to feminist literature, Black feminist thought process as a way, I didn't know it then, but it was a way for me to be myself. When I first started reading this work, I wasn't out yet. I was unsure if I was queer. Now I'm very much woo, 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 with the gays.
Like, are you sure now?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I think you're sure.
Right. Yeah, I went to a women's college for a reason, turns out.
There were signs.
Well, there were signs the whole time,
You know when they say, if I become a billionaire, there will be signs?
There will be signs. When I became a lesbian, there were signs as well. My
Let's
mom was
start with the
very much
shoes.
exactly the Doc Martens of it all. I was saying it's pride. We all need a big chunky shoe to really flag who we are. And I always fight back against the idea that Black femmes don't, or femmes in general, don't give gay. And I'm like, if you listen to us talk and check the details, it's there. It can be the fanny pack, the shoe, the style, okay? It's all there. So I wanted to talk about first with the Feminist Reader. I think it's funny that you called it portable because all books are portable, but I think it's just a read of like, we need this work. Before, I always tell people that I love reading because it equips me with things that I can use against people. That they have not taken the time to learn. But I definitely see this work right now as just something that we need in order to solidify ourselves. There's always this idea that Black women should be teaching and really making space for everyone else. But I think the last couple of years, but especially this year, we have seen that we need ourselves. We need to free ourselves in more and different kinds of ways. So I really want to hear from you about like how are you imagining us using this book? Who is this book for right now, especially given our circumstances?
Well, thank you for the question. When we talk about feminist theory and feminism in practice and feminist discourse, people tend to be really reticent about engaging and oftentimes feel like the barrier for entry is too high, that it's not for them, that it's too complicated, or they don't know where to start. And so primarily what I want people to see this as is a place to start. And one of the things I write about in the introduction is that it's not meant to be canonical. Because I feel like canon is an ever-evolving thing. It shouldn't be static, even though historically it has been very static and very narrow, and I'm trying to explode that notion with this book. Now, there are some expected texts here, but then I go much further afield. So I also want people to see possibility. And I want them to see that feminist discourse can come in unexpected ways. There are a couple poems in there. There is a piece called Chonga Manifesto. It is just really, it has the range, as the kids say.
I know that's right.
And so I really hope that people engage with it in good faith, recognize that it is the beginning of a conversation rather than the end point, that there are all kinds of omissions, and there is no one way to fully encapsulate feminist thought, but this is simply my curation of it, and that it's an ongoing conversation. This is not the first version of this book, nor will it be the last. And so I hope that people take things away from it that they didn't previously know. I hope they find the work engaging, and I hope that people are also thinking about what they might include in their own portable feminist reader. I didn't name it, by the way, but it is portable. It's very light.
You can carry it around.
It's cute, and it fits in a bag, satchel, or purse.
Yes. Lesbian items. Okay?
Always. Very lesbian book. Very lesbian book.
One of the things I love is yeah, some of the people in the book would probably be beefing at a dinner party.
Oh, for sure.
Susan B. Anthony
sure.
is in there, and I love that you include Anna Julia Cooper, who was the first. I feel somebody over here like. I would imagine what would it be like for Susan B. Anthony and like Samantha Irby to be at a table together? Hilarious.
It would be
one.
very hilarious, but only one of them would be actually funny.
Yeah. The other one would be red, like the whole night.
For filth. For filth.
Yeah. So what? And I loved Anna Julia Cooper, who she was introduced to me when I was in D.C. by a really good friend who was getting her master's. And she would kind of like use our reading groups as like we were her guinea pigs of what she was teaching and learning. And I'm like, oh, finally somebody who I can use against folks who think feminism started with white women. So I would love for you to speak to like that, why you paired some of these works in this piece and how, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
You know, history is long. And history is full of flawed people. And especially now, a lot of people who are very progressive minded want to erase history or want to sort of reorient it and pretend that the people that we have problems with now because our sensibilities have evolved and matured, like shouldn't exist and that they had nothing to offer. Now, Susan B. Anthony's a mess. And there are many, many things that we can and should critique her on. But we can't deny her role in history. We can't deny her contributions to letting white women vote.
She did her big one.
And I got to write little notes in front of each piece that's included, and I sure did mention that. But, you know, that's why I wanted to put her aside alongside an Anna Julia Cooper to show that here are some of the voices that people overlooked, that people want to erase, but for different reasons, because people don't want to acknowledge that Black women have contributed to feminist thought and discourse forever. And it's not just Sojourner Truth, however amazing she is. Like, there are so many other Black women. And so, again, it was about balance and also integrity and trying to be clear-eyed about history instead of being in denial or trying to pretend that if we pretend that, for example, Susan B. Anthony never said anything useful during her entire career, that will undo the wrongs that she did. But that's not how history works. That's also not how hindsight works. And so I think it's more important to include that kind of work and then have the necessary conversations and also ensure that her mistakes are not repeated, because memory is short, as much as people like to pretend otherwise. And we continue to see some of those mistakes being made even now as we look at the ways in which some elements of the feminist community are abandoning the trans community. So, you know, like, these are necessary reminders. We shouldn't look away from difficult pasts.
And I again, your work has always spoke to that. This idea of I'm someone who loves to watch and try to read as much as I can because, again, I want to use it against people. And it just helps me formulate an opinion. And I think we're in a time now where, you know, there's so much pushback against culture critique, especially when you critique things that you are the closest to in identity. But I am seeing it more as this is a sign that not only that, like, I am a healthy person in this world that is trying to really make us all very monolithic. And it's a sign that, you know, it's, as much as we talk about upholding democracy, critique even within the arts is a sign that fascism hasn't rotted all of our brains. And I love that this work can help us do that even within the context of feminism, because it's still necessary.
It's so necessary. And a lot of articles have been written, especially in recent years, about the crisis in criticism. And many of them are actually getting things a little bit wrong or a lot wrong. There are some crises going on in criticism, but again, like, let's use the word crisis carefully, because, like, what's happening in Gaza is a crisis. What's happening in criticism is annoying. Like, these are matters of scale. And so the other, we're facing a couple things right now. One of the issues is that there are just some people who want to hate everything, who just have no oxygen in any room that they're in, who don't want to see any joy in anything. They just feel like hating everything is a personality, and that's intelligence. If I hate everything, I'm above it all. This is also bourgeois. And I'm like, well, hating everything is also a bit bourgeois, but okay. And on the other hand, there are people who feel like stan culture is the way in which we have to engage with culture. We have to just love everything unconditionally and no criticism is allowed. The only person that we cannot criticize is Beyonce. Everyone else is fair game. Oh no, I stand on that. I'm like, you shall not malign her at all. That she is sacred, but everything else is not sacred. And as feminists, I firmly believe that we have a responsibility to respect one another enough to critique one another, to take it in good faith, and feel your feelings. Like whenever I read a bad book review, I'm just like, first of all, bitch, you got it wrong. That's not what I said. That's not what I meant. But you had a point about what happened on page 37. Once I get through my feelings, I do sit with it. I do try and absorb it and hopefully not make the same mistake twice. And it makes me better as a thinker, and it makes me better as a writer. The people who are reluctant to criticize, for example, people who are working from marginalized communities, that's condescending, and quite frankly, that's bigoted. Because you think that you have to just sort of accept any old thing. Like, not all feminists are right. And not all people who say they're feminists are feminists. And we can talk about that. We absolutely can, and we should. Not to the detriment of having other conversations, but in addition to having other conversations. Criticism is really, really healthy. It just can't be the only thing that you do.
Are y'all taking okay, so we're doing Q&A as well. So hold on to your questions. I will not be the only one asking them. I also want to talk about, again, I'm treating this like my personal DM message, but
let's go.
One of the things that has also been such a highlight and a joy to me as a writer and someone who is also an artist has been the way you guide and mentor, but not in this way that is gatekeeping or like surveillance, right? Mm-hmm. You're someone who, even when I come into a space like the Hammer or Rutgers, at first when I did a talk at Rutgers by your request, and when I came in, I had a brief moment, because it's a gorgeous campus, but I had a brief moment where I'm like, well, is she sure? Because I talk a lot of shit, and I'm going to be doing this in the academic space, but I immediately calmed myself down, especially because of who came out to hear me speak, because of the groundwork that you have laid. So I'm going to use this as a segue to talk about Patti LuPone and Audra McDonald.
Yes, I love Broadway gossip.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get some of your thoughts on this, because from my perspective, we're seeing someone who is really trying to move beyond just surveilling new talent, and not only talent but peers of color, especially as Audra had this. She is the most nominated Tony performer in history, and she's also a Black woman. So I just wanted your thoughts on how you're reading that situation. What is there to learn from that? What's your hot take?
Now, listen. Patti LuPone is incredible at what she does. She has an incredible voice. She can act. She's big and brassy and bawdy. She's a real broad. And she has historically been a bit of an asshole. That's not new. And she is fairly equal opportunity. But what she did with Keisha, whose last name I'm forgetting, and Audra McDonald, and making some of her comments about what's the name of the show? The show about Alicia Keys'.
Hell's Kitchen.
Yes, thank you. Her comments about Hell's Kitchen. On the one hand, part of what she was saying is that back last year, she was doing a show with Mia Farrow, and they were doing a 2-person play, and it was their theater stage was abutted against the stage of Hell's Kitchen, which is a big, full musical. And so you can hear the sound bleeding through across many Broadway theaters. And in general, the theaters will work together to find ways to mitigate that by, timing things, etc. And so Patty complained about it and then brought it up in a New Yorker interview last week. And she mentioned this woman, Keisha, who is one of the stars of Hell's Kitchen, won a Tony for it last year and has been in 10 Broadway shows, and refused to acknowledge that woman as a veteran. She is a veteran. She is highly decorated, and more importantly, she's highly respected. Audra McDonald is probably, other than Patti LuPone and maybe Bernadette Peters, the most famous living Broadway actor in the world, and also the best. And so for her to then sort of disparage Audra McDonald by saying she's not a friend, well, perhaps they are not friends. Well, they're not friends. But it was so strange and so very gatekeepy, because what she was trying to say, or what was implied, I don't know what she was trying to say because I'm not her, but she was really sort of implying that she gets to be the arbiter of who is in and who is not in terms of Broadway and community and wielding power. And we often see this very uncomfortable dynamic between white women and black women. And we often see this around gatekeeping in terms of access, in terms of seniority, and in terms of mentoring. There are a lot of white women who love to chase a black woman around the workplace and mentor her. And they tend to treat the mentee as like a little pet. And oftentimes there's like no seniority between the two, but they just feel that because the black woman is black, that she needs to be mentored. She needs to be taught. Everyone needs to be mentored, but not everyone needs to be mentored by a peer or by someone who has not accomplished the kinds of things that they accomplish. When people ask if they want to mentor me, I'm always like, about what? Like, what do you think you're going to teach me that my own vetted and awesome mentors are not already teaching me? Like, you don't have anything to add to this conversation. And so I think it's important to name these things for what they are. But I also think it's important not to put more on the situation than it merits. Is Patti LuPone racist? I don't know. I think that we have to sort of recognize that this was one moment of not great behavior that has racial undertones or overtones, depending on how you look at it. But it may not just define all of who she is, because I think she's equal opportunity, kind of just an equal opportunity hater. And, it is what it is. So those are all of my thoughts around that.
Equal opportunity is. I feel like it's on her to decide.
Like, she talks shit about a lot of people.
Forward if she's racist. Like, what are you going to do next?
Yes.
You prove it, not me, not for us to discuss.
Absolutely. So I tend to, again, think I'm a Libra, so I'm always going to see multiple sides of any issue. And I'm not saying everything is okay now, but I am saying again, this all or nothing culture that we're currently in, which is quite frankly very fascist, does not serve us. It does not serve us. Let's hold that energy for the actual criminals, Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, the little twerp who fucks couches.
Oh my God. Our VP.
Yes, the vice president. Stephen Miller, Santa Monica's very own. I think that things, again, scale and proportion matter very much.
Okay, and I think you already spoke to how do you approach mentorship? How are you, because you also teach, how are you ushering in this new class of writers and thinkers and keeping them in there?
Well, one of the key things that I try to do with mentoring is, first of all, I let people approach me. I always make it clear that I'm available and I'm generally interested. My time is finite, so I can't say yes to everyone, but you can ask. I don't try to, unless, with a few exceptions, I don't generally go to people and say, hey, would you like a mentor? I think that's very presumptive, and far be it from me. I also know that through my work, through my teaching, through my advocacy, people tend to read that as mentorship, and it is in part. And so with my students in particular, I very much try to teach them the importance of having a work ethic, because young writers, and young can be any age, tend to believe that there is a great deal of distance between them and their dreams. And we have a lot of cultural rhetoric around how hard it is to get published. It's not hard to get published. It's hard to get published in The New Yorker, but anybody can get published. The world is filthy with magazines. It's just they're everywhere. And some of them are good and some of them are mediocre and some of them are terrible, but anyone can get published. And so I always want my students to understand that your dreams are possible. Your goals are possible. Your goals are not necessarily dreams. That, yes, sometimes luck and magical connections play a part, but more often than not, it is hard work. And when you work hard, you put yourself in a better position to take advantage of luck. I try to talk about the importance of reading, because so many students are like, oh, I have to read in a writing class? I'm like, yes, that's the textbook. And so I try to focus on the importance of reading and writing and bringing rigor to the craft, to spending less time worrying about what other writers are doing and what other writers are getting, because those opportunities are for them and your opportunities are for you. And that despite all of the rhetoric about how difficult it is and how opportunities for writers are disappearing, we can talk about the state of publishing, but we can also not close the door behind us, even that once we're already in those rooms. So many professional writers do it and are like, you know, don't go to get an MFA, don't do this, don't do that. I'm like, why are you telling people not to follow your path? It doesn't make any sense. And so I try to, speaking of abundance, I try to mentor and teach from a place of abundance, because the scarcity mindset does not serve anyone, and a scarcity mindset makes it very hard to be creative. And so I try to speak about abundance as often as I can. And I also try to share opportunity, especially for people of color and for Black women. If you're the only Black woman in someone's Rolodex, they tend to believe you're the only Black woman who can write and who exists. And, oh my God, like, do better. Have some imagination. This is a really wonderful time to be writing alongside my peers, and especially in the Black community. There are a lot of us, and we're doing really great work, and it shouldn't only be 2 or 3 who are getting all of the attention. And so I try to share opportunities, because my time is finite. I can't do everything, and so I work very hard to share opportunities with my peers and to tell them what money I was offered. And I learned this from Gabrielle Union, to let them know, here's what they offered me, so that they don't play in y'all's face. Because they'll tell one person, yes, I can pay $4 a word, and tell another person it's 50 cents a word. Like, is it? Is it? And so honesty and openness can be really, really helpful. Connections. If someone asks, can you introduce me to your agent? I'm like, well, is your writing any good? Because she's got good taste. And
Period.
no, I wasn't even bragging, but yes, that too.
But yes. Also
And so
that.
I always, if the writing I think can stand up to like that level of publishing, then I am happy to make the introduction. It doesn't cost me anything. These things, it doesn't cost me anything. But even if it did, I would be happy to do it. And I don't know, I'm not a saint by any stretch of the imagination. I have enemies. I have 10 nemesis. If you've followed me for a minute, they're on my phone. But it does not benefit me to be the only Black person or the only Black woman in any given room. I'm not proud when that happens. I'm actually angry. And if I leave a situation as the only Black person, I know that I failed. And so that's, I guess, the last thing that is part of my mentoring. I will never leave a project, an organization, a room that I'm in as the only Black person if I enter as the only Black person.
Love it. One of my other favorite facts about you is that you own a Glock.
I do.
Yes. You're like, oh my God, speaking of
do.
enemies. But I bring that up because you wrote a really a piece that I love around Black women and gun ownership and how to rectify that as a feminist. or even if you do. But I mentioned that as a shock because I think you're quite brilliant at writing about things that at first glance are easy to misunderstand or to put in out of context of your intention of writing about it. So I wanted to know more about that, especially in reference to your piece around gun ownership and Black women.
Yeah, last year I published an essay on Everand, which used to be Scribd, called Stand Your Ground. And it was this like 17,000 word essay about gun ownership because I had, I think guns are abhorrent. I actually don't think anyone should be able to own them. But that said, my brother Joel, who died 3 years ago, was a gun nut. This dude had guns coming out of his ears, and he lived in Texas, and then Florida. So it's just like, oh, of course.
He's being encouraged.
Yeah, he was, and we're from Nebraska. It is what it is. And he always just talked about guns. He loves them. And one day we went to a shooting range. He was like, yeah, Rox, you and Mike should get guns. And I was like, I am not in any need of a gun, but thank you. And when he died, we had to go through all of his stuff, and he had like 100 guns. And I was like, what the hell happened here? And I started thinking about, why was he so into guns? What was he trying to do there? And part of it was he genuinely was a hobbyist. He genuinely loved it. But during COVID, before he died, he was just like, okay, Rox, stop messing around, get a gun. Because, everyone was watching the news and seeing all of these like alarmist stories about, oh, the world's coming to an end. It was, but not in that way. But I decided to start doing some research. And at that same time, I always get death threats, but I started getting a lot more. And they were starting to get very specific and were like centered around knowing exactly where I live here in LA. And because when I bought my house, I bought my house 5 years ago, and I didn't know I could like buy it under an LLC and hide it. And so the information is not easy to find, but it's findable. And then my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, is Jewish, and I started getting these deeply anti-Semitic threats. And that meant they had done research, and they had Googled her and knew her name, which wasn't a secret, and knew her faith, which is not a secret. She's very proud of it, and we are a very happy two-faith household. But it was terrifying because it wasn't just me anymore. I have a family now, and I just know that I would rather be able to protect myself and my family if one of these absolutely insane men from the internet actually decided to do something than be too vulnerable and not be able to protect myself. So I decided to take some lessons, and there's a gun range in Inglewood. And when I went there, I noticed that there were all kinds of Black women at the range. I never expected that. I thought it was just going to be a bunch of bros. But it was only people of color and primarily women, and they were very good. I personally would not
roll up on them.
Don't
not
roll
up on the aunties in Inglewood.
Not in the wood.
No, not in the wood, honey.
It's not for you.
Not what you thought, huh?
So because I had to confront my own prejudices and preconceived notions, an essay was born. And so I wrote about like what it's like to buy a gun in California, which is a real pain in the ass, as it should be. And frankly, it's not enough of a pain in the ass. And going to the store is no longer open, but there was a gun shop in Culver City, and the whole experience was very masculine and very odd. And like the guys there were one guy was wearing camouflage shorts and a tank top that was like blue and a cowboy hat. It was like a kid dressing themselves and then going to work. And they were all kind of off looking, just different. But when you start to talk to them and ask them questions, they were encyclopedias. And there's a waiting period between when you buy the gun and when you pick it up. And when I went to pick up the gun, this guy said, hold on, my manager wants to talk to you. And I was like, what did I do? And this woman came out with a copy of Bad Feminist. And she said, will you sign my book? And I was like, oh my God, someone who owns a gun reads my books? Again, preconceived notions. And it turns out she was a fan of mine and saw my name on the paperwork and knew when I was coming in. And all of that made for me, a really interesting essay, because anytime I have to confront prejudices of my own, when I have to confront a new experience, and when I do something I never imagined I would do, I felt like that would be interesting not only for me, but hopefully for readers. And so far it has been. And, you know, I still feel quite ambivalent about gun ownership, and I really do believe we have to eradicate gun ownership because there are more guns than people in this country, and that's an illness. It's a genuine illness. But I also know that there are far more gun owners than we think, and the fastest growing group of gun owners is Black people.
I'm into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and also Griff from Public Enemy is a gun instructor now.
Wow.
I know. I learned so much about it. I learned so much. And there are all kinds of Black women shooting clubs and Black people shooting clubs all over the country.
Yes.
It's amazing.
And because of this fascination that was then justified for me through that essay, I follow this other Black woman whose name is also Amber, who like shows you how to conceal your gun in a cute outfit. So she's like hiding her gun under her skirt, like, and she teaches gun safety. I think there's this this idea that, you know, we talk about the work being a weapon, right? Being able to write these words, being able to have these conversations. But I love to get like to base it in our reality. What we're actually up against. People don't want to actually talk about what Black women are up against, even in our own homes. The fact that we're most likely to be killed by our partners, or what does it mean to move through this world, and how do I viewed the essay as and the other essays that you curated, because there was another one about weightlifting and how to actually become stronger, become bigger, even as a bigger body person, that I just think is the coolest thing about the world that you're building around your work, for me as someone who's inspired by it. Another question that I have is, lately I've been, again, taking my work out of just the headspace and trying to make theory, but actually writing about my life, is I want to write more about sex and desire. Because sex and desire is happening, okay? And you are someone, listen, okay, it's Pride. I'm telling you. Now that the corporations are out of Pride, we can really get to business.
No, we're getting back to basics. Let's go. Line up the dental dams.
Listen,
I'm ready.
Titties out. That's what I want to say. Get it out there, all right? Like the way it used to be. Anyway, but I would love to hear you talk more about even as a fat Black person, why you write about sex, why it's important and I wanted to base it in this, that we were at a dinner and your wife sent you flowers. And it was just like the cutest little moment where you have these flowers coming. I'm like, oh, this is a display of you being desired and loved and cared for. And what that meant for me as someone watching, of like, oh, and somebody send me flowers when I'm at my work event. But yeah, I would love for you to talk more. As we were talking about backstage, people think like fat folks don't fuck, and they do.
Listen. People have lots and lots of ideas about fat people. Like, oh, nobody wants them. I'm like, have you watched My 600-Pound Life?
Correct.
They're all booed up. All of them. All of them. Haven't left the house in 7 years. Not a problem. Not a deterrent. Tammy on the 1,000-Pound Sisters, she stays in a relationship. I'm always like, get it, girl? And so I think it's important to acknowledge that you can be desired, that people can be interested in you, that it's not fetish-based, and that it's mutual, because so much of what this culture tells us about fatness and race and desire is that, A, we should be grateful when anyone desires us. B, that they probably want something more, that they're using you, that it's inconvenient, or that if you are desired, it's something that has to be kept secret. And these are very hard messages to not internalize, and I think most of us do, and then have to spend our adult lives undoing that work and trying to allow ourselves to be desired, allow ourselves to express and articulate desire. These are really challenging things, and I feel like it's really important to write about that. One, I'm very good at writing about sex.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I am. And what a lot of people don't know is that I wrote erotica for many, many years before I was being published in mainstream publications. I have probably 100 publications in that area. And like good stuff, literary, very
Very
she-she.
highbrow.
Very,
Yes.
very precious, very
sexy.
fucking fancy. And you know, I always loved it, and I wrote under a pseudonym, but the pseudonym is very uncreative. Think first initial, last name. So it's not a pseudonym. And I just thought, you know what, let me write about sex and desire. And I don't do it a ton, but I certainly do it in my fiction. And it's just important. And it has been important for me as a person to realize I can write about this. And I think it's important for other people to see that just because you don't want to have sex with a fat person doesn't mean that no one does. That's a you problem. You are definitely missing out because we can lay it on you. And that's okay. People have their preferences.
I also feel like a lot of people are lying.
Oh, there's listen.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
know they're lying because and I write about this a little bit in Hunger. You know, when I started gaining weight, it was definitely out of trauma, and I wanted to make myself safe, and I also just wanted to make myself invisible. And I thought, if I'm fat, nobody will want me. Listen, I have yet to find a size at which no one will want me or anyone else. That's not like an ego thing. It's just, there's just no size where a man won't hit you up, period. It's just, they may not like take you out on Maine, but they will absolutely dial your number and be like, you up? Mm-hmm. Not for you.
Not at all.
No, I'm asleep. I'm typing from the bed.
What is I think this is so funny too, because the gym that I go to in Inglewood, it's like fighting off animals.
I
It's
mean,
like I try to go in and
like,
come
shoo.
out. Stop it! Like they're watching your squat. They're just looking for something to comment on. And sometimes I do go in there and play like I'm not a whole lesbian just for the fun of it. But then I have to run out really quickly.
It's funny you should say that because like I don't like going to the gym. Actually, my trainer is here tonight. And so I work out at home now because it's just too much to be out in public. But it's absolutely true. And then they'll look at you like, do you need help with that?
Yeah.
Do
you
I
know, you just
seem
gotta
like
go
I need
low right
help?
there. I was like, I feel like you're.
The
Why are
extra
you watching this?
instruction, the extra instruction always sends me, like if I'm in a hotel gym or something, I'm just like, I'm not looking for tutelage here.
I'm not.
I am fine. I am
totally
fine.
okay.
And that's like kind of their way of like, it's like the opening. I'm like, let me close this door. Not interested for so many reasons.
For
so
so
many
many
reasons.
It's
I'll list
like-
them alphabetically.
Mm-hmm. And I'm in here in the middle of the day, and what I want just would not be here during this time. I'm so sorry.
Right?
Go to work. So yeah, I that was one of my favorite tidbits. I feel like a lot of great feminist writers probably secretly write erotica.
I think they have to. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's so interesting because we have so many weird cultural ideas about feminists, and some of them may be grounded in truth, the way stereotypes, you know, may begin with a tiny kernel of truth. But feminists obviously are sexual, and it's just that we believe that sex should be consensual.
My God.
Amazing.
A concept.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That sexual violence is wrong. And that if we have sex with you, that doesn't mean that you own us outside of the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And that we should be paid less or things like that. That's where people sort of, their brains break.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like, yes, we have sex and pay me what I'm worth.
Right.
And don't attack me on the street or catcall me or
Yes.
whatever.
And at any point I can tell you no.
Yes.
Yeah.
At any point.
Any moment.
Enthusiastic consent.
And it makes it fun.
It
like
does.
In my personal opinion. Being asked is a good entry point.
Well, it's actually how, like, my wife is amazing. Her name is Debbie Millman. She's an extraordinary artist, designer, podcaster. And I didn't know who she was when she started pursuing me, and I didn't Google her. It wasn't my brightest moment. And on our first date, well, first she asked me out on a proper date after like a year and a half of trying to get me to go on her show. And I'm dumb. And then on our first date, she asked me if she could kiss me at the end of the date. No one in my entire life, 43 years at the time, had ever asked me if they could kiss me. And I was just like, yes. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much.
And it was so sexy. Like, people like to make it seem like it's not sexy to get active and enthusiastic consent, but it's very sexy.
Yeah.
And it's also like a nice little ego boost. Like, oh, I matter enough to be asked. This is great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah. I like to ask and direct.
I bet you do.
Well, this is so fun. But I do. It's true. Yeah,
I firmly believe you.
Yeah,
I watch your Instagram every day.
Yes.
By the way, you have to watch Amber on Instagram. She has the best Instagram stories on Instagram.
At your own pace, at your own risk. We keep it honest and fresh over there. And I love that a lot of our conversations also start in the DMs. That's why I was talking to a friend about coming out tonight. I'm like, I hope I don't get too comfortable that we get in trouble, because I can really throw anything out, you know?
Anything could happen.
Anything can happen. So I also want to leave time for folks to ask questions. So please have your questions in mind. Before we go there, another question I wanted to ask you is, there's a lot of conversation, specifically, I feel like in Black women's spaces, about how to have open and honest conversations about our gender and our gender in relationship with Black trans women. I feel like once a week at this point now, Jess Hilarious, if you all know her, or The Breakfast Club. If you don't, good job.
Congratulations.
Congrats. As a pop culture obsessed person, it comes up a lot for me. But there seems to be just like this battle that doesn't need to exist between us, especially because a lot of the issues that we are impacted by is the same. They're the same things. And I wanted to know how you're approaching, or not even just approaching or taking responsibility for, but how are you viewing this conversation, especially being someone who is platformed and visible, about how to talk about the relationship between Black cis women and trans women and non-binary folks? What are we meant to learn from this? How are we supposed to be engaging with this right now?
One of the primary things that I think we're all meant to learn from this is that solidarity is critical, and that when we don't show solidarity, we are saying more about ourselves than the people with whom we refuse to have solidarity. And it's really always troubling to me when any sort of woman, cis woman, I should say, decides to be transphobic. What is going on there? Because this idea that we are going to target a group of people more vulnerable than we are to feel some kind of power. Like, I firmly believe, I don't know what Jess Hilarious's malfunction is. She's also not hilarious. But
change the name immediately.
Like, to like Jess.
It should be just Jess.
But like, there's something in her that needs to feel dominance over someone, and I think it speaks to how disempowered she feels in her own life. And I would rather that we have productive conversations about how to feel less disempowered, or even closer to actually feeling empowered, and that we could do that work without taking something from another group. being bigoted towards the trans community is not going to elevate us in anyone's eyes. It is not going to get us closer to the things that we most want: safety, respect, safety. It just doesn't. And this is why intersectionality matters so much, and why we have to talk about it and recognize that we cannot abandon the trans community. It is part and parcel of feminism. There is no separating it out. And I also believe that the onus is on us to call this out when we see it. When we are among women, cis women, and feminists, which are not synonymous, who are being transphobic, we can't sit there and smile or look away. We have to say, that is wrong. The reason that we're here in this situation in the country more broadly right now is because for so long we have sat by and not called out absolute bullshit. And there are many other things going on. I don't want to simplify the current political moment, but the media right now is doing such a huge disservice by like calling lies falsehoods and using all kinds of rhetoric to dance around what's actually going on. I saw an article, I think in the New York Times, talking about that stupid plane that plane that's clearly bugged. But okay, sure. That Qatari plane, and the Times was like, it opens up complex ethics questions. I'm like, does it? Or is it just a huge breach of ethics in global politics? And so I think we have to be very plain in our language in calling out things as they are for what they are, instead of pretending or dancing around it or using euphemisms like "just hilarious" is transphobic.
Right.
It is unacceptable. The fact that she gets to still be on the air on The Breakfast Club, sanctioned by probably the most popular radio show for the Black community in the country, like, it's unacceptable. How is she still on the air? Which speaks to the values of our community sometimes, that we are willing to look away or we are fine with what she's saying.
Right.
And so we have to attack it head on. We cannot leave anyone behind, because there are more of us than there are of the fascists. But the fascists are more willing to coalesce into a unified force. They don't care. And like, we sit around sort of dicking around, talking about small differences, really, instead of working together and saying, we're going to work together and have these differences. The way conservatives currently are doing. They're like, yes, this is evil and horrible and the world is coming to an end. We're on board.
Yeah.
This is great. Solidarity. Like, every time I look at little Mike Johnson, when you can just tell he is like, oh, this shit I'm eating tastes horrible, but I'm Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
You can just tell they're like, they're not happy about it, but they do it. And I think that those of us who are more progressive minded have to do that. And I think we can without compromising our values.
Right. And it's not a deterrent to talking about race issues and human rights. Like, all of these things are together. Like, I realize, especially as a Black woman who is dark skinned and 5'10", that I have no business being transphobic. Like, I'm suffering from, I will experience transphobia actually in relationship to patriarchy and misogynoir. It's all looped in together. So I'm grateful for the Black women, especially the Black trans women in my life, who just keep making way for us to have that conversation with each other, and for me to be able to take that back into spaces where they're not in community with Black trans women, to be like, okay, do you see how this doesn't benefit you either?
And I think those connections are really important. And it shouldn't have to hit close to home to get you to care, but sometimes it does. I get called sir all the time. And I'm always like, now, please. Thelma and Louise are right here. And you can see them and they're magnificent. So, sir, my ass. And, I'm going into the bathroom and like there's always like some woman who I would never be interested in a billion years looking at me with like real panic. I'm like, lady, please.
Well, you're safe, honey. I
Do
promise
not flatter yourself. But also, I just have to pee.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is one of the many things that made me more sensitive to these issues and also made me engage with my own prejudices and ask, like, why wasn't I being more vocal about this issue? When, in fact, it does affect us. And a lot of us are intertwined in ways that we don't necessarily realize until we're forced to. And I hope that we can sort of start to make those connections without having to be forced to. I think it'll speed things along.
Please and thank you, at least for our survival right
Yes.
now. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Questions for the audience. I know we have someone running a mic. Are y'all ready?
Oh, yeah, there's a question right in the middle.
Right here. And then we'll go over there.
Oh, teamwork.
Thank you. So wonderful to hear both of you speak. I have a question kind of jumping off of some of the interesting things you guys were saying about sexual liberation, erotica. I've been working on a project, and I don't know if you're familiar, but I'm so curious if you're been tuned into this. There's been a lot of news stories of OnlyFans stars who are having sex with 100 men in a day, 1,000 men in a day. I've interviewed some of these women, and it's a very interesting kind of phenomenon of attention economy reaching this stuff, and these a race to the most obscene. And these women really heavily identify as feminist. And in my experience, like if we look in the 60s, like sexual liberation and women's liberation were not the same. And they've kind of morphed into one movement in some capacity. And I'm just curious, maybe both of you guys can answer this. Is there certain lines we should draw as feminists of like, this isn't feminine empowerment, this is selling women's bodies? How do we navigate that conversation without, let's say, shaming sex workers while also, discussing this explosion of OnlyFans and this seduction of this as feminist liberation where, when you meet these women and you see them in documentaries and stuff, they are in a lot of pain and they're clearly very struggling. One of them, the one who had sex with 100 women a day, I wanted to interview her mother, and her mother runs all her finances. And her mother said she wouldn't be interviewed because they once did an interview with her, and she felt it disrespected her privacy. And they gave too much of her personal details. So we're seeing these dynamics, and they're getting a lot of attention. So I'm really curious what your thoughts are on this development.
This development is not new. Porn stars have been doing the X number of loads, whatever, for many, many years. And it's not feminist. Maybe you do feel empowered by that, but it's also not anti-feminist. And I don't think I think sex work is totally fine. I don't think it's any of my business. It's been around for millennia. It will continue to be around for millennia. I think we need to focus on the men who are watching the woman have sex with 100 men. That's the conversation I'm interested in having, because there is something that has told her that this is the best way to get attention and to make money. The problem isn't that she's doing it. The problem is that she has reason to do it. And so that's the conversation I'm more interested in, and especially as feminists, that's the conversation we have to concern ourselves with. I'll also note that the men are doing it too. There are a few guys, many of them are on Twitter, weirdly, as in they're sharing this on Twitter. The 96 Loads guy from the other day, I hear.
Yeah, I'm being put on right now because you're like, where do you draw the line? I'm like, I'm drawing the line at 3, okay? 96.
I mean, just
Sorry,
logistically, I'm like, the body is finite. Where is it going? Is it being absorbed? But, I also think that, I don't judge these women, but it does make me sad. Not because I don't think they're making a choice of their own volition, but because, physically, that seems really painful. And one of the young women who recently did one of these videos is in the hospital. And of course she is. It's a lot. It is a lot. And so as a human being, as a 50-year-old who gets more maternal as she gets older, I'm just like, oh, honey, can I bring you an ice pack?
Yeah, I feel like even what you just said in terms of audience is something I've been sitting with a lot lately in terms of not being so fast to critique what's being presented, but why it's being presented to me. So my obsession is like these Black women who only make content around how to get rich husbands and how to date wealthy.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is a good, I always tell if my friends are having a hard time like letting a man go, I'm like, watch this shit. Like create standards.
The whole hard wig, soft life?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not willing to
I'm
put
not
on the
mad
hard
at
way.
it.
I'm not.
I'm not mad at it, but
there's
yes.
nobody I'm willing to look a mess for in that way. But I've been really interested in just as we get more and more content because it's so short of these different pathways people are taking in order to like have that magical moment where they're able to make money from the content. And my entry point right now is the way it's happening with like it's not even children's media. It's like the Miss Shirley situation where grown ass men are coming to line dance with a toddler. And the entry point is to critique the parents. And it's also like, but also let's critique the society of men who are participating in this and people who are not stepping in to be like, yeah, y'all can't be here. Or why aren't adults held to a higher standard to say no to these certain things? Like, where is their line?
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering at what point, where of course we're not getting any of these platforms to regulate this stuff. So what needs to happen in culture that people have a higher sense of even their own self-worth and participating in it as viewers?
Yeah, one of the most consistent audiences for all of those family YouTubers is pedophiles. These young girls that they put on the camera in their little matching outfits, sweet kids. It's pedophiles who like develop fandoms around these people. Whether it's porn or family content or how to get a husband, it's that we have monetized attention. And because people get so addicted to these things, whether it's porn or not, you have to see more and more extreme stuff to get that same reaction. It's just like drug addiction, where you need more and more. There's so many ways that this is manifesting, and I love TikTok, but TikTok is a real problem, and it is only going to get worse. On TikTok, there's a feeder community where fat people eat food in truly, even I will say, shocking quantities. I'm not talking about like, oh, a big dinner, but like 5 pizzas, 60 chicken nuggets. And the comments are so cruel. So cruel. And I'm like, you smoke cigarettes, shut the fuck up. They're so cruel, but these people get tens of thousands, if not millions of views. And that's how they make a living, because it's a feedback loop. I'm going to do this thing that is going to get me a lot of hate watching, and then I'm going to monetize that. I'm going to go have sex with 100 people or 1,000 people because that's what people need to see to feel something, and I'm going to monetize that. And so it really just comes to like, we have to look at our consumption and what we enjoy and why we enjoy it and why we are willing to allow it to be monetized. And until we address that problem, we are never going to see an end to these very extreme things. But I also think we can separate all that from like empowerment and just call it what it is, which is capitalism.
Hello. Okay, we had another question.
Oh yeah, we have a few in this area. Oh, and in the front too. Raise your hand. There we go. Thank you.
Don't be shy.
Don't be scared.
Thank you so much, first of all, for all your work. And I just wanted to ask what you think of the current state of reproductive rights activism, given that again, this might be just my subjective view, but there hasn't been so much of a response in the way we might expect, given the shocking rollback in reproductive autonomy. And I'm also thinking of the current pronatalist discourse that has suddenly emerged. So I'm curious about what you think of these two phenomena.
Yes. The two things are not necessarily intersecting, but it is interesting that they are related, for sure. The pronatalist thing is silly. It's just billionaires are so dumb, and they don't know what to do with their money. You can give me $1 billion. You will never hear from me again. I will be fine. I will spend that money. I will give a lot of it away, but I'm not going to be like, I'm going to give it all away. No, I'm going to buy me a fly-ass house in Holmby Hills. It's going to be fine. It's going to have like 20 gates. No one will ever be able to reach me ever again. I'm going to buy all of the art I've ever... Hell no. Absolutely not. I'm not going under the water. I'm not going up in the air. I am going to stay my ass at home where I belong. But, you know, like all of these like tech guys who are like, oh, I'm so smart that I need to multiply so that I can save the world. And I'm like, oh, please don't. Don't. Thank you. But no. And so a lot of it is just ego. A lot of it is white supremacy. Because they're not asking Black women to have more babies. They're not asking Latina women to have more babies. They're asking white women to have more babies. And white women are universally saying, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. That's why we're seeing this population shift. The right people to me, but the wrong people to racists are having too many babies. And so the abortion thing is entirely to stop white women from having abortions. Period. End of story. And the pronatalism thing is to encourage white women to have a bunch of babies. Period. End of story. Now, what happens once you have those babies is none of their business. They don't care. They're not going to help you clothe, feed, or educate that baby. They're not going to help you take care of that baby, and you're not going to get any goddamn tax credits, so shut the fuck up. Just have the babies. And then if they survive without vaccines, good luck. Congratulations. It's 1854 all over again. The reason we haven't seen a lot of pushback is that I think a lot of the work is happening. I think it's happening more on the state level. I think it's happening legislatively. And a lot of people are being very realistic about what we're currently up against in terms of the numbers in Congress and on the court, that there's only so much we can do. I also firmly believe that the only real solution to this is to end the gerontocracy in the Democratic Party, to completely root out everyone involved in the DNC and start over, because the Democrats had ample opportunity to codify abortion access. They had ample opportunity. When Obama was president, he had the House and the Senate and the judiciary and did nothing. And the Democrats threw up their hands and said, what can we do? Biden was literally the president of the United States. What can I do? Trump is showing us that you can do whatever the hell you want. Today, he has banned travel from 11, 12 countries, including Haiti, where my family is from. So now half my family who actually happens to be visiting here has to leave and may not ever be able to come back, even though their children are here. And so, you know, it's Afghanistan and Myanmar / Burma or Iran. It's a lot of countries, and I don't think it's going to hold up in court, but he's trying it. And so we really have to fix the Democrat problem, because Republicans do whatever the hell they want. They make their promises and they follow through on them. In fact, Trump is so desperate to fulfill his promise about deporting immigrants because they can't find any. They're making things up now. They're just kidnapping people off the street. Any people, mothers, children, husbands, teachers, dentists, hairdressers, it doesn't matter, because they lied about how many immigrants there were, undocumented, and they are well aware that undocumented immigrants are doing all of the work that keeps this country running. The restaurant industry will collapse within 2 or 3 weeks if this continues. The farming industry will collapse. The meat packing industry will collapse. And so the Democrats have to get their shit together and start to understand how to wield power. Even now, we are seeing Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, all these fucking useless ass Democrats in the House and the Senate. What can we do? We don't have any power. You're a literal senator. You are an actual senator. 330 million Americans are not in the Senate, but you are. And you can't imagine anything you could possibly do here. Meanwhile, when Mitch McConnell was in power, he would do anything. He's like, I am not going to let any of their judiciary picks through. And that's exactly what he did. Today, let's vote through Trump's guy. Yes, let's do it. Why? We have no choice. So we need a new political class who understands that they do have choices, that they do have power, and that change is necessary. Nancy Pelosi is not our friend anymore. Why is she running again? Why? How much power does one person need? What are you getting at your big age from staying in the goddamn house? You're worth $350 million. Again, go spend it. What are you doing? So I lay this entirely at the Democrats, and people keep talking about, where are the activists? Where would you like us to be? What could we possibly do when our elected officials, who are supposedly progressive, refuse to do anything? Oh, let's also talk about Gavin. Gavin, you dirty boy. And yes.
Okay, hi. First, I wanted to thank you so much for your work.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask about the intro to the Portable Feminist Reader and what you say about when you wrote Bad Feminists and how that was interpreted, and that sometimes when you put things out in the world, you can't get them back. I thought that was very striking and honest. And I wanted to know how you stay conscious and how you process your influence as a writer on on mainstream culture and our discourse.
Thank you. These are all great questions. When I wrote Bad Feminist, well, first of all, I didn't think anyone would read it. But when I wrote the title essay, I was thinking through my relationship with feminism, and I wanted to create a space for myself in feminism despite my flaws, despite not knowing every feminist theorist, despite having some inconsistent preferences and things like that. That I may be a bad feminist, but I am a feminist. And that I didn't feel like I should have to pretend otherwise and not be counted as a feminist just because I'm flawed. Unfortunately, you don't get to control how people interpret the work that you put into the world. And many people received it very well and felt more welcomed into feminist spaces, and I'm really proud of that. There was a small segment of people that thought it meant that it was a carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they wanted and call it feminism. It's worse than choice feminism, which is not feminism either. But I got a lot of pro-life women, for example, who would email me and say, I'm pro-life, but I'm a bad feminist. And I'm like, no. You could stop at bad. Yeah. And so that was challenging for me. And that's, people ask, would I do anything different with Bad Feminist? No. I did the best I could with the knowledge I had at that time. But in the 11 years since, what I have started thinking more about and trying to do more is, yes, I'm a bad feminist, but how can I be better? And also, how can I hold myself accountable for my flaws? Because there are consequences to the choices we make. Like, if we enjoy misogynistic music, and I still stand by the fact that Salt Shaker is poetry, they're only going to continue making that music. At some point, we do have to hold the line and make better choices so that we get better options. And so that we don't have to be bad feminists, we can just be feminists. And so I think a lot about accountability, and I try to live more with accountability. In terms of influence, I mean, it's still hard for me to believe that anyone listens to anything I say. I spent the day watching Kitchen Nightmares, so we are who we are. But I don't take it lightly. I try to always lead with honesty and I do believe in integrity. I do think it matters. I make mistakes and I try to own them as best I can once I get through like my own feelings and the fact like that, oh, I hate not being perfect. I always try to make clear that I'm not perfect. I always try to make clear that I'm not the only voice, that there are so many other people that are participating in this conversation right now. So I just try to approach it the way I approach everything, which is as honestly and fairly and openly as possible. And when people want too much, when they have expectations that are not realistic, I am also I try to have very firm boundaries. And my wife, who's a Scorpio, has helped me quite a lot with this because I'm a pleaser. And I'm like, oh yes, you can have whatever you want. You can do whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. But it's okay to have boundaries. A lot of times people think that if they buy your book, you owe them something. And I'm like, you got something in exchange for buying the book. You got the book. Like, I don't have anything else to give you. That's it. And so I just try to remind myself also, like, just because people want things from me doesn't mean I have to give them. And I'm not an opinion vending machine. Like, sometimes I'll like be walking down the street and I'm one of those rare writers that, you know, nobody's going to generally like walk down the street and see Jonathan Franzen and be like, oh my God, Jonathan. Not because he's not lovely, but because he's just like most writers are nondescript and we just like fit in our lives. But I happen to be 6'3" with tattoos and fat. So people notice me and I get recognized every day. And it's so surreal because I'm like, I'm just a writer. Calm down. But they'll just like be like, so what did you think about whatever? And I'm like, oh my God, put some lube on first. What are you doing? Calm down. It's a lot. And so I try to navigate that as best I can, but to also sometimes just say, you know, like I'm, you know, with my family right now. I don't have time to do this or I don't want to do this. And I hate when it disappoints people. I hate when I have to say no to people. But there are only 24 hours in my day, and I have to reserve some of those hours for myself. So it's a balancing act.
They should wait until they're asked by the Hammer to come and interview you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I did.
Yes. Let's see how it worked out.
It worked out for me. I think we have one more question.
Hi there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this electrifying and enriching conversation. I want to ask about theoretical racial solidarity versus lived racial solidarity because I am an Asian woman from a part of Louisiana that's not New Orleans. And so I think that coming here and seeing, all these ethnic enclaves, yet people are still organizing 100% more than where I'm from. But it's like, are y'all hanging out? And I think that was the most interesting distinction between the South and California. I just wonder, what do you think is the reasoning behind that, and what's the remedy?
I've actually been talking about this quite a lot lately. The world is very segregated, especially outside of the South. People like to malign the South all the time, but I've recently spent a bit of time in the South for a range of reasons. My brother lives there. My parents or my father live down there. And the thing about the South is that it's honest. And people down there do live together. Like, I have a Klan meeting tonight, but let's go get a drink first. And it's not that simplistic. It's actually much more complex, but it is much more honest. And in places like, people think California is the promised land, and in some ways it is, but it's still very segregated. All of the little towns here, Koreatown, which is amazing, but like Koreans, they're like, I'm not leaving Koreatown. I'm good. And, when people live in the Mexican neighborhood or the Venezuelan area or the Burmese area or the Filipino area, it's like people tend to stick to their own. The Black community is very segregated here. The literary community is hella segregated here. And I don't know what the solution is. I do think that part of the solution is being honest about it and calling it out and calling it in, as people tend to say, because it's not something that you should be ashamed of. It's a problem. Let's acknowledge it and let's figure out how we can create some intra-racial solidarity, because we can do it. We can do better. We do have it in us. But so many of us just live our day-to-day lives, and we have our friend groups and we have our professional groups, and they tend to be very monoracial. Like, I always look at my friends' little pictures on Facebook and Instagram. I'm like, y'all don't have any Black friends. What is happening? And not only any Black friends, any friends of color in general. So I think a lot of us have to start being more honest with ourselves about who we are including in our lives and what we're doing to change that if it's very monoracial. But I don't know. I really don't know how we overcome this. But once we figure that out, I think that we'll deal with all of this other stuff.
One of the things I've noticed in LA too, and even just in queer spaces or LGBTQ plus IA spaces, is that we're also segregated in that sense too. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've been very passionate about lately is like inviting each other into those spaces. Like recently, I did a park day with a group called Counterculture, and I went to a field trip with them, and I was like, there's no way I would be the only girl on this trip. And we were the only girls on the trip. It was a bunch of gay boys. And then I was made fun of because I had like an Angela Davis book. Like, they were very amused by the fact that there were 2 women there. But then that opened up a conversation about how can we talk more, especially because this particular group of people is also very involved in the media and culture scene here. So if it's only, even if they're gay men, if it's only men, we're missing so much. So just telling them that, they were like, okay, well then let's do this. Let's have you host an event and bring more. And it was funny because, you know, the gay boys, they have their way of going about things. Especially with parks.
Just preach. I know that's right. Tap your foot 3 times.
It was so surprising to them that like the lesbians were there painting and reading books, and it's like, yes, you can do other things in this, you know, just making fun of my community. Don't, you know, I love them. But it was just like this moment of like, how can we bring our cultures together and have fun with each other, even outside of like the party scene, like. And I'm learning more and more that it's actually talking to each other, like about our interests, not just our politic or trying to like make everybody an example of their identity or the place we go for that. Because I'm from Ohio, and it's the same thing there. It's like you are in a mix of communities because you have to be. You're working the same Amazon job, or you're going to the same grocery store, or you're lacking the same resources. So you have to work together in a different kind of way than some of what I've witnessed here in Los Angeles, especially. But I do think it's about, you know, also like woke folks jumping out of our boxes to get some hobbies, you know, like go take a sewing class. Like these things open up things. Like I took a sewing class, and I realized there's like the fashion district in LA and like these different kind of workers than I would ever be exposed to just doing writing or content creation or artist work. Like, and it was intergenerational. Like, it was amazing. So I think that's another thing is lately I've been learning how to not just isolate myself because of my opinions, essentially, of only wanting to be with people who think the same way that I think, but being more courageous and showing up with all of that in other spaces that are not just meant for me. So I think that's a part of it too.
And I would also add, just because I think that was so well said, that we have to all, and I absolutely include myself in this, be more comfortable with discomfort, which I talk about quite a lot, but so many people are so resistant to discomfort as if it's a fatal condition. And it's not. It's temporary, and it's not fatal. It will not kill you, and neither will crossing the 405. It just won't. It just won't.
Do we?
Yeah.
Go for it.
We have time. Yeah. For me, it's a little different because I'm Haitian American, and we were raised very isolated in the Midwest in Omaha, Nebraska, where there wasn't a significant black community. Well, there is a black community, but we lived in West Omaha far away, and there were only like 3 Haitian families, and we did all know each other and hang out every weekend. So when I came out, because we also happened to move around a lot, and my dad's company was headquartered in Omaha, so we would go to a job and come back, go to a job and come back, and so we were moving every 1 to 2 years. And so for me, my community was so all over the place, and I went to boarding school for high school because of all the hopping and bopping, that when I came out, there was nobody to care, except for my family. They were not thrilled. But my goodness, the way they have come around, I think they like Debbie more than me. And they like me a lot. So it's been wonderful to see how my family has embraced me and has really matured and developed a more expansive understanding of community and sexuality. And the Haitian community has really surprised me as well. They don't actively engage with it as much, but I never am shy about it. I'm not pride flag gay anymore. I was when I was 18. I love the pride flag. I'm just saying that more like, I'm just like, oh, let's go watch BritBox. But when I go to events within the Haitian community and or the Black community, I don't hide the fact that I'm married to a woman. I actually bring her with me. I'm very proud of it. I talk about it if it comes up organically. And if people have some kind of feeling about it, they don't tell me. And that is a huge change, that I do feel comfortable enough to be my whole self in most spaces that I'm in. Now, if I'm traveling abroad, I tend to educate myself about the norms of that culture. Not everything has to be a teaching moment. Like when I was in Egypt, when I was in Dubai recently, I was just chill. Like, good morning. Here's my friend. No. I didn't call her my friend, but we weren't like holding hands walking down the street in Egypt because we knew better. And I don't mind respecting other cultures, even if I disagree with some of their bigotries. It is what it is. But it's been okay.
I think I'm still learning how to navigate it all, because I'm the oldest of my mother's children, and I was also the golden child. And then I was like, guess what, guys? Remember that women's college education you gave me?
I learned it.
Yeah, I learned it there. It was them and Ellen DeGeneres. Anyway. But I feel like for what I have learned since coming out, and I came out going into my 30s, and I'm 35 now, is that a lot of Black women are gay. Like, whether they know how to articulate it or not, they're actually curious about their own sexuality. And I realized that it was kind of like one of my superpowers, that I really read to people as their like cousin. When I came out, I was getting all these other stories from other Black women who wanted to come out, especially as someone who came out later in life. And I always hold that with a lot of care. And speak into it as much as I can, because I know that is the view that some people are watching me from. And I also am learning how to speak more openly about how that has, one of the reasons why I didn't want to come out is because I didn't want everything to change, but I was uncomfortable. So I did come out to find more comfort, and then now I'm in this place where I have to keep showing up in these spaces and being uncomfortable if I want to have ownership to them, because my community, my Blackness especially, is very important to me. And I felt as though for a long time, I felt like coming out would separate me from my Blackness, specifically the Blackness that I inherit from being a part of a Black family. But what I've learned is like, they're not going to get it right all the time. I'm very grateful, apparently, for Pose, because that really helped my mother. Because She loved the music. It was like, that was her time. And sometimes I just really, just like, even this month, she's like, Happy Pride. I love Pose. I was like, I didn't say anything about Pose. Like, I came out and she was just like, ballrooms. I'm like, girl, that's not me. That's not who I am. But I'm like, okay, a gateway. Like, let me talk to her about these things. And I realized that it's about continuously showing up and saying that this is yours. This is mine. I belong here. I'm still in this culture. I'm also keeping Tyler Perry on air, unfortunately, by watching that shit. And it's a way for me to engage with my community. So I think that what I noticed, because people, when you speak, when you just remain a human being, that they do love you. Your family loves you. They don't want to lose that. And I find that the more I talk to them about it, the more they'll get pissed at other people for not loving me. So, like, when I had an uncle who voted for Trump, which Black people are doing that, honey. He's also, yeah. But my mom is like, the day of the election, she's just like a warrior. She's like, called your uncle a fucking idiot and that, like, and it's because she's like, don't you know your niece is gay? Like, and I'm like, okay, however you gotta get there, but also there's other things that you could be working on. Like, you could learn a pronoun every now and then. So I like give it, when she's doing well, I give it to her, you know, and I just keep showing up to it. So I do think being Black and queer is a power. It's a very special honor that I realize, especially because I'm not separating myself from Blackness and Black people, that I can speak to it. And I have decided that I have what it takes to speak to it and will continue to speak to it. So even if there is pushback, I'm going to show up to it and then go into my spaces where I find love and care and comfort to replenish me so that I can go back into it, because I know that this is the work. I need it to be different because I need something different for my niece and for my nephew. I need that in this lifetime, and I plan on having it.
That was so well said. That was so well said. You know, it's funny you should say that. You know, one of the key things I think that you articulate quite well is that sometimes you have to meet people where they're at. Literally. And the older I get, the more I'm able to meet my family where they're at. Now, I don't let them talk crazy. Right. I don't let them say, like, transphobic things, for example. I call them out on it. But I also understand that everyone doesn't know everything automatically and understand everything automatically. And this notion that that's what acceptance means is not good. But also, we're in a very unique political moment where people are acting very badly. And it's important to sort of live our lives as openly as we can within, you know, without harming ourselves, so that people recognize that we're not going to be erased from public life. We're not going to go back to living in shame and darkness. We're going to keep living, and I think that's the best way for everyone to sort of move forward. Like, life is not going to end because fascists have no imagination. And they're so bad at art. Donald Trump's favorite.
They're terrible. Like, you're taking over the Kennedy Center to do what exactly?
Girl, that's exactly what I was thinking about. I was like, Donald Trump's favorite musical is Cats. And there's nothing wrong with that. My wife actually interviewed Betty Buckley today. And Cats... It was a moment back then, but like that he is the president of the United States and he's like, Cats.
Yeah, no taste.
Let's get that. It's just bad. Like, these are tasteless people, and just remember that if you're in this room, you have excellent taste.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think that concludes.
Amber Abundance.